Hi, and welcome to week 2. In this video, I'll be going over the first paper you're going to write this semester. So you've seen the word autotextography in the syllabus, and instead of jumping right in, I want to go back to what the term actually means. So you'll see here, we'll start with the type of writing that inspired the idea of an autotextography, autoethnography. You may recognize parts of this word, so maybe ethnography or autobiography, but to break it down into pieces, auto means personal, related to the self, ethno means related to cultural experiences, and graphy is analyzing through writing. So ethnography means to analyze cultural experiences through writing. You may have heard of an ethnography, which is the study of social interactions and behaviors that occur within communities or organizations. Could be a certain village or a subculture that the writer researches and writes about. And so when we add the auto, it means the writer is incorporating their own experience as they're conducting the research and analysis. Instead of acting as an invisible, objective lens, they acknowledge their own possible biases and discoveries within the writing itself. So going up, okay. So to write an autoethnography, a researcher uses aspects or tenets of an autobiography and ethnography. Okay. So these references may either be too old or obscure, but I'm a big film fan, and these were the main two I could think of. If you've seen Mean Girls, you'll remember that Katie, or Lindsay Lohan's character's parents, are zoologists, so they study animals. So Katie grew up homeschooled and in the field with her parents in Africa. Once she starts attending a public school, she sees, things in the high school through the lens of a researcher. In multiple scenes, she analyzes the different cliques in the school and compares their behavior to the animals that her parents studied. And I think all of you will agree that every high school kind of acts as a small community, for better or for worse. So there's hierarchies, traditions, there's rules that may be spoken or unspoken, and there's different subcultures or cliques. So in Mean Girls, of course, Katie's plan to infiltrate the popular girls goes awry, and the auto aspect takes over the plot. Okay. Midsommar is an independent horror film that is probably the opposite of Mean Girls, but is one of my personal favorites. So we have Danny, the female protagonist, who travels to Sweden to visit a small pagan community that her boyfriend's friend belongs to. So she goes with her boyfriend, the guy that's part of the community, and a couple of other guys. Two of the men in the friend group are interested in studying the Harga, or the group that ends up kind of being a cult, for academic research. So they participate in the community's rituals. So they're acting as a student, a researcher, and a participant. And as you can imagine, since it's a horror film, things also go off the rails. But the idea of academic study and autoethnography are present in the film. So for this assignment, we're going to replace the ethno with text, as we started touching upon in the first week when you submitted the text you've been enjoying. This genre comes from a Stony Brook professor, Peter Coast, who I'll quote on the next slide. So you may wonder why I'm using the term text instead of book or movie. And while you can definitely write about a novel or a film, you can also use a text that falls outside of those mediums. The only rule here is that it needs to tell a fictional story, so you can't use something like a documentary or a nonfiction book. You may think of something that's not on this list, in which case you should shoot me an email or post it in that general discussions forum on Blackboard. While there's definitely an analytical component, this is kind of the most personal and creative essay that you'll be doing this semester. So we have this quote from Peter Coast, and I had his book around and definitely misplaced it, but it's around here somewhere. But like I said, he's a professor in the writing department at Stony Brook. You may get to take a class with him at some point. So while this quote is a bit more complex, take some time to pause the video and read through it. So I'm basing this assignment on his prompt, but with my own twist, which is where the comfort comes in. So you might be thinking at this point, okay, but what does she actually want me to write? And while I want to keep the paper open and flexible, there are definitely certain tasks that you want to accomplish. You can think of this list as a possible structure to start an outline based off of it. So we'll start with description, and that's what will most likely serve as the hook that draws your reader into your paper. It'll position you and show your reader what was going on in your life when you met this text. It may go back to your childhood or adolescence, or it may be entirely based in the last year during the pandemic. I want to hear if you found it randomly on Netflix, if a friend recommended it, etc. For the summary of the text, concisely is the key word here. So only include enough info for your reader to understand what you'll be talking about in the rest of the paper. If that means like a broad plot overview, that's fine. Or you might want to focus on one character or one scene if that's what the rest of the paper will talk about. But definitely don't spend 2 pages explaining every detail of the text. Worst comes to worst, I'll go on Wikipedia, read what I have to kind of get the details, but this paper is about your experience. For the next step, analysis is where you're going to be diving deeper. So you'll want to consider reasons, connections, themes, tropes. So I want you to dig here, and you may be surprised at what you find while you're thinking about it. The research part is going to be pretty limited for this paper and won't go far beyond Googling. I want you to see if others have written about the text online and if their experiences match up with yours. So if it's a book, you might want to use Goodreads, which is an app where people post reviews. For films, I like the app Letterboxd, or you may already know where to look. So a specific subreddit, a forum, so the people that enjoy that genre. So if you're writing about, a story told over a podcast or a video game, you might already know where people are talking about that online. And finally, I want you to try to make a brief argument where you combine your analysis and kind of the global context. So the pandemic has forced most of us to find new coping mechanisms, and hopefully you've been able to find comfort through a text. So for the argument here, you're going to zoom out a little bit. If you found other people online sharing similar thoughts, make those connections for your readers. You could quote them. You could think about why that demographic is attracted to this piece specifically and why they find themselves using it in a certain way. So here are some additional questions to consider, but you can also go outside of these, really think of them as prompts. So how have comfort texts functioned for you both before and during the pandemic? Have others had that same experience? If so, are there patterns you can identify? And what does your experience say about you and about the audience of the text? So you don't want to just focus on the text being meaningful, but really thinking about how you're using it and why you're using that text. So lastly, I covered some of this already, but I want to reiterate what you shouldn't be doing in this paper. So only enough summary to make your reader familiar with the text. Challenge yourself to really boil it down to the most important elements for what you're going to be talking about. So what they need to know to understand your experience. And for the purpose of this assignment, I don't particularly care why you like it or why it's entertaining, unless you're analyzing those reasons. So thinking about why you particularly like it or find it entertaining. And lastly, don't rely on big abstract concepts like nostalgia. So I loved this movie when I was young, so it's comforting now. Or this character in this video game is relatable, so it's comforting. These are good places to start, but I don't want you to end there. Really think of those as starting points, but keep asking yourself the why and the how questions. Okay, so to sum up, I do want this to be fun. It'll get you to start thinking about analysis, possibly a little bit of argumentation, but hopefully also serves as an outlet for the insane stress we've all been experiencing. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone's pre-writes at the end of the week, where you're going to tell me some of the options of what you're thinking about. And as always, questions you can send over to me or put them in that discussions forum. Because if you're thinking, oh, I have this crazy idea, I don't know if it's going to work, probably will. And there are probably students in the class thinking the same thing. So thanks. Bye.